Today I want to talk about dealing with a shady garden, being able to grow plants there, and some tips and tricks that you could try, and then some different plants that I can suggest, or at least that Google can suggest, and why it is that it's hard to grow anything edible. Well, I can't say anything edible. It's hard to grow like berries and fruit in shade. Let's put it that way. All right, let's get started. So, first of all, why is it difficult for fruit and berries and stuff like that to actually do good in shade? And that's because sunlight provides the energy for photosynthesis. The photosynthesis is what the plant needs to make the sugars, and that's where you get your sweet berries, and that's why you need your sunlight. So now the other problem that you might run into if you don't have sunlight is things like rust. So I know some berries will, I think it's like a powdery thing that they get on them that's not healthy, that you need to watch out for if it's got too much shade, moisture, all of those things. So I would definitely look into that for your area. And I know some plants, I want to say it's the pawpaw, that it likes shade when it's young, but then later on in life, it would prefer more sun. The other thing is the flavor, the color. Those things develop more, and actually they could be sweeter. Again, goes back to the sugars, right? When you have more sunlight. Otherwise, you can still have berries, but they'll be more tart, which is perfectly fine too if you like that. Now, when I got my citrus trees, I did look at which one could tolerate more shade. So if I put one in my patio area, which is what I was thinking, it might get 6 hours of sun, but it's not going to get as much sun. And so I wanted to make sure that it was still going to be okay. And I actually didn't ask. I actually posed it to Google in the sense of, like, is there a citrus fruit that is more shade tolerant? And what it came out with was lemons and limes. So I happened to have a lemon tree that I was wanting to put there, and I was wanting to put somewhere in my garden. I was like, okay, well, perfect. That's what's going to go there. So looking at things like that, when you're trying to plan out where you're going to put what, if you can even have it, if you even have a space for that. But I realize that some people, they just have a ton of shade and they still want to be able to grow fruits and berries and stuff like that. Now your veggies, a lot of them will still be able, I've got something in my eye, will still be able to make it. A lot of the leafy greens still love the shade. I don't see where that's a problem at all. And the things that I read didn't say anything about it being a hard on like your leafy greens or other veggies like that. I'm sure they still love sunlight, and I'm sure it still helps them develop some of the different vitamins and nutrients that we eat them for, but they can still survive. Like, it's still doable. Maybe you have partial shade. Maybe I'll talk about a little bit later ways that you can try and get some sunlight or pseudo sunlight into those areas. But one of the strategies I would think that you could consider is vertical gardening. So I have an area I have a fence line where the sun comes in south of it. And so I have about 1.5 feet, 2 feet where there's just shade. It's not entirely shade, but it's pretty shady. I mean, and if you look at the Google Maps, it's just like this strip of black area. It's just dark. But what I figured out was I could plant something like a grapevine that's elevated. It gets it up off the ground, and it'll be able to still get sunlight. And so it's happy. It's like 1 foot or 2 off the ground, which gets it out of that shade zone. It gets it out of the shade zone that's on the ground. And then it's just growing and flourishing like crazy. I'm hoping that it'll grow vertical more, but I have a feeling that's more dependent on which are the stems that I choose. It's a little bit slower. Anyways, let's talk about which plants actually do work. I did a search for which fruits and berries would actually survive in the shade, and I was surprised. I got quite a good list. And of course, this is going to depend on where you live, on which ones will actually make it. But I think reading through it, there's a good wide variety. I want to say there's like 8 of them. Yeah, 8 of them that will tolerate shade. And I think they actually grow over a wide variety of areas. So gooseberries is the first one. I know up in the northern states, they were growing gooseberries. Currants are pretty far and wide from what I understand. I have never grown currants, but there's 3 different kinds. Raspberries and blackberries typically love sun. Even if you can just get them a few hours of sun, that would be amazing. But they will still produce fruit in partial shade, is what it's telling me. Now, low bush blueberries. It's a variety of blueberry that's adapted to shade. So they typically thrive in sunlight. They prefer acidic soil, but they can tolerate shade. So there you go. Elderberries and service berries. So I have heard service berries are really good for that. Elderberries, I didn't know that they can handle shadier spots. So that's 8 berries that you could test out in your garden for, whether or not they can survive in the shadier areas. You might already have these there and not know. So check out your local nursery and see what you can find there. Talk to them. Find out what they see survives well in the area. Make sure that you're not going just to a big box store and buying whatever they have, because they're going to tend to have things that maybe aren't supposed to be grown in that season, aren't survivable. And then they have their guarantees that if you plant it and it dies, but I think it's actually really disheartening. So do your research before you go there. I've got pawpaw also showing up. Just gonna look at it really quick. Deciduous. Eastern North America, which I've seen pawpaw grow even in the Midwest. But I don't know that they're not, it says that they can grow in the shade, but I'm not sure. 17 fruit crops that grow in the shade from Epic Gardening. I love them, by the way. They do amazing. They're expanding like crazy, and this is not really helpful right at the moment. So let's talk about the different strategies. So I've already talked about one, which was the vertical gardening, getting it up off the ground. Even if it's not something that would be planted in the ground, maybe it could be a container that's lifted further up that could actually get some of its leaves and stuff into the sunlight if it's just a low shade problem versus just a total shade problem. You could consider thinning the tree if it's a tree that's causing the shade. Now, sometimes it's just a building, and I get that. In my case, it's a fence. There are other ways. So one of the things I found was people actually using, those reflectors that people use to sun themselves. You can set those up to actually point towards your plants and provide kind of an artificial but actual real light source for your plants. It wouldn't be a year-round thing if you don't have a year-round fruiting, right? If it only fruits in the spring, then you're only going to be doing this for 2 or 3 months. That could survive or be viable as something that you would maintain. The other thing that I would consider, and let me see, I will have to pull it up and put it on the screen for you. But there's a light bulb now that they're making for people to get actual sunlight because they are finding more and more reasons that sunlight does great things for our bodies besides just vitamin D. Things like activating your mitochondria and producing other stuff besides helping your body produce other things besides vitamin D. But I forget what the wavelength is, if it's 680 or whatever it is actually super, super good for your mitochondria. It gets them activated, and it doesn't necessarily have to be every part of your body that gets the sunlight for all of the mitochondria to get activated. And guess what the number one wavelength is that gets reflected by plants? That's it. That's the 680 or 630, whatever one that is. It's exactly that. So it's more of a reason you should have plants. They reflect the good stuff for you so that you get more and more exposure. I think that it was the end of that for shade loving. I will have more shade stuff for you going forward because I feel like this is something that a lot of people struggle with. But I just wanted to at least get some basics out there for you, throw some ideas out there. If you have ideas on how you're dealing with shade or great ideas that you've seen on how to deal with shade, please share them in the comments so other people can see them. And then if you have questions about them or you want me to explore it more, I can do that. All right. Happy growing.